I think if, God forbid, Israel were destroyed, it would leave fear in the hearts of Jews everywhere and open the floodgates for anti-Semitism to be totally accepted. So don't you feel that in some way Israel also acts as a safety net? Because the Muslim population is growing in America and outnumbering Jews, and it could come a day when Jews aren't welcome in America. Where would we go?
Who was it who said, I forget who it was, that the problem with predicting the future is that it hasn't happened yet? I mean, or something like that. I'm misquoting, but that's the gist. It's very hard to know what would happen in America. You know, I mean, I think, look, first of all, obviously, you have history on your side, right? The Jews of Cordova in 1485 believed they were completely secure.
Exactly.
And the Jews of Berlin in 1920 believed they were absolutely secure. Okay. So that means the Jews of the Upper West Side and Newton and the West Side and whatever else should be thinking about that. Yeah, I think they should. By the same token, there's something very, very, very unique about the American democratic system. America is a pretty amazing country, and I say that, by the way, as a person who consciously and willingly left it. But I left it by no means angry at it or disgusted with it. I left actually in awe of it, and I've actually become even more in awe of it since moving to a place which does function as a democracy with a lot of the things America has not having taken root here yet. America has a very self-righting, self-correcting democratic system. Look at McCarthyism. Right? McCarthyism could have really brought down the American democratic system, but it didn't. Watergate could have become a crisis from which the country didn't recover, or so could Vietnam, but they didn't. There's something ingenious about what the founding fathers in America, we won't go into the details now. Probably some of you here know more about it than I do. But there is something really unbelievably ingenious about the American system, which I think is very self-righting. And I don't mean self-righteous, I mean it's self-correcting. And therefore, I don't know how much of a bulwark against anti-Semitism Israel is. If anything, Israel might be more of a cause of certain anti-Jewish disposition these days, because Israel does some gnarly things, some of which it has to and some of which it probably doesn't have to, but it does some gnarly things in the business of staying alive.
So does America.
But we're not arguing about America, we're talking about Israel. So therefore, if you ask me if the average American would have better feelings about Jews or lesser feelings about Jews if Israel were to disappear, I think it's a very hard thing to know. There's a woman named Kinney Zalesny. She works for Hillary's campaign right now. But she's writing a book called Microtrends, the small numbers that change everything about American whatever. But it's coming out in September. But her last name is Zalesny, Z-A-L-E-S-N-E. And she works for Mark Penn, which is the big consulting firm in D.C. She points out that in 1940, Americans were asked about their impressions of a whole variety of religious groups. Quakers, Mormons, Jews, Jews ranked lowest. Lowest. Had the highest rate of negative associations with your sort of dyed-in-the-wool, everyday American. The same exact study was done, I think, in 2000 or something. Jews ranked highest. It's not because of Israel. It's because the Jews have been given access to America, again, not because of Israel, because of the openness of American society. And Jews have done very, very well. And Jews have so far still been able to kind of perpetuate a certain dimension of what Jewish culture and Jewish tradition is really about, in increasingly small ways, but nonetheless. Still, and some of that has been brought to bear in American life, and Americans have to respect what the Jews are all about. I think that Israel's been a very, very, very small, I suspect that Israel's been a very small piece of that change. And therefore I suspect that the loss of Israel, God forbid, would also be a relatively small piece. And I think it could cut both ways. It might remove the safety net, as you call it. It might also remove the thorn that gets a lot of Americans really pissed off at the Jews, because the Jews look at the Jews and there are tanks against these poor boys throwing stones. There's part of that too. So I think it's hard to know how it would cut. And I wouldn't venture to guess beyond that.
Rosella, were you going to guess?
Yeah, but I'm still trying to phrase it, because it's not really a question, it's my remark, because I hear that a lot, like the argument that Israel is so great because it's Jewish and we can use Jewish morality here and
could, not necessarily we do.
Yeah, because that's the thing, because like I always feel like saying, but that's not the reality. It's great that there's a Jewish state, It's great that we have Jewish morals, but it has not always that much to do with the actual Jewish state. It sounds more like a Zionist ideal that never really happened. It happened in maybe certain fields, but it's not the reality we live in, especially now.
So I would say to you, first of all, great piece by Leon Wieselter in a 1994, I think, New Republic article, and you can find it in the New Republic archives, called Against Identity. Pretty sure it's 1994. But Wieselter makes what's the obvious point, but it's worth noting, that by definition, you can never be what you aspire to be. Okay? So I remind you that Israeli Arabs, for example, the only Arabs, I believe Iraq has a temporary experiment out for the moment. The only Arab women who can vote in a Middle Eastern country are Israeli Arabs. Israeli Arabs have the highest level of education of any Arabs. We are far from perfect. But if American forces had occupied the West Bank and the Gaza Strip for 40 years, it would look very different. I guarantee you that. Guarantee you that. Don't you come to me and say, well, you'll pick up this second.
Yeah.
So I want to apologize. I'm not. This is not where we're doing fine. We're not doing fine. A lot of ways in which we are doing terribly. Okay. And I also want to point out to you, by the way, that with all things that Israel's doing terribly, in order to change, you got to have options. Now, yes, you can give better training to the soldiers who man checkpoints. You can do that, and you should do that. I also remind you that the soldiers manning checkpoints are 18 and 19 years old. Most of you have passed that age. And most of you, I think, will remember some of the incredibly ridiculous crap that you did when you were 18 and 19 years old, because you were children.
Yeah.
We take children and we put them in green, and then we wonder sometimes why, under horrendous, stressful situations, they don't react perfectly. I don't wonder, because I see what that child does when she comes home. She's a child. Big kid, but child. At 20 years old, she's a kid, you know. I mean, I remember what I did when I was 20. I'm not going to tell you. But I remember what I did. You know, I'm not terribly proud of all those things, but I wasn't manning a checkpoint. When my commander had said to me, nobody gets through. Nobody. And if you violate this, I'm going to throw your sorry ass in jail. And then a pregnant woman in labor comes up to the checkpoint, and I can't reach my commander on the walkie-talkie. Yeah, I didn't know how to deal with that when I was 20 years old. When I was 20 years old, I tutored a black kid from Harlem 1 day a week for an hour, and I didn't really understand why I didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. Hello, I'm here. I did this every week for a whole year. Come on, like, hello. Right? I thought I was really neat. And I had just no clue. So yeah, we could do a better job of training these soldiers, I suppose. But you have to remember the fact that poll after poll after poll after poll shows that when the Palestinian state gets created, which I A, believe it will, and B, hope it will, that 99% of Arabs inside Israel say they have no intention of moving there. Not crossing their mind. Because it's much better to be a second-class citizen in Israel, they say, than to be a first-class citizen there. Because there's complete freedom of the press here, more or less. Much more than less. There's academic freedom here. Nobody here has been taken out and shot by the government for what they said. Not Jew, not Arab. I mean, I can go on and on and on. And the health care here. Where are Arabs getting better health care? Yeah, it's probably because we have the money, but it's also because a lot of other things too. So my point is saying you're absolutely right. You are absolutely 100% right. There are a lot of ways here in which this country embarrasses me. Embarrasses me. Yesterday, today's Jerusalem Post tells about yesterday some settlers somewhere up north near Nablus went ahead, took a 14-year-old kid shepherding his flocks, broke both of his legs, fired shots in the air, left him around, then he got taken to a hospital, etc., etc. It's an abomination. It's an abomination. When people in Kippur, and you can't see the kippah because they're wearing ski masks because they've learned from Hamas. Oh, that's a nice thing. That's an abomination. And a Jewish country has to look very hard in its core and ask itself, how did it allow that cancer to grow inside its midst? I think it's a big question for us. The fact that Baruch Goldstein could do what he did. Yeah, we are filled with things that we ought not to be proud of. But I want to aspire on a stage where I can make a difference. The difference between me and Bialik's compadres in the yeshiva of Volozhin is that if they couldn't make those Jewish ideas come to reality, it was nobody's fault. And if I can't help make them come to reality, then I'm a failure. Because I'm a citizen. And that, for me, is all the difference. So, yeah, it's about dreaming. And it's about aspiring. And I think that Judaism is about dreaming and aspiring.
Most Israelis don't seem to have that attitude, especially
So most Israelis have to be taught.
Huh?